So in this class, we will see the development of the tongue and the thyroid gland in continuation of the head and neck embryology. In the head and neck embryology, we have already seen the pharyngeal arch derivatives, the development of the face. So the tongue also develops in relation to the pharyngeal arches. Before we start with the development of the tongue, the ventral wall of the floor of the primitive pharynx exhibits three features craniocaudally: the rudiments of the developing tongue, the thyroid diverticulum, and the laryngotracheal groove. So, the tongue develops in the floor of the primitive pharynx. The development of the tongue will be considered under three headings: development of the mucous membrane, development of the muscles, development of the fibroareolar stroma. So the under three headings, we will see the development of the tongue. First, we will see with the development of the mucous membrane. The mucous membrane of the tongue develops from the endoderm of the foregut. The tongue has two parts, ventral 2/3 and dorsal 1/3. The ventral 2/3 will be called as oral part and the dorsal 1/3 is the pharyngeal part. So we should see this development of the mucous membrane of the ventral 2/3 and dorsal 1/3 separately. When the pharyngeal arches are developing and before they meet with their opposite side pharyngeal arches, in the endoderm of the foregut, three endodermal swellings appear. A pair of the lingual swellings on the ventral ends of the first arches, and there is another unpaired swelling, that is the tuberculum impar, between the first and the second arches. So pair of swellings are at the ends of the first arches and an unpaired swelling between the first and the second arches. The paired swellings are called as lingual swellings. Unpaired swelling is called as tuberculum impar. How these swellings are produced? These swellings are produced by the proliferation of the underlying mesenchyme. So in this, you can see the two lingual swellings at the ventral ends of the first pharyngeal arches and an unpaired swelling, tuberculum impar, between the first and the second arches. These two lingual swellings grow forwards and fuse with each other and also subsequently join with the tuberculum impar. So this forms the anterior 2/3 of the tongue or the oral part of the tongue. This is mostly bilateral in development. So as I have told already, the lingual swellings grow forwards and fuse with each other, then fuse with the tuberculum impar and form the ventral 2/3 of the tongue. So the tongue rudiments develop in the floor of the primitive pharynx. It should separate from the floor. How it will separate? Along the front and sides of the rudimentary tongue, there develops an endodermal alveolo-lingual sulcus that will separate this tongue from the floor of the mouth. So that oral part of the tongue has developed. Now the pharyngeal part of the tongue will develop. How it will develop? dorsal to the tuberculum impar, another endodermal swelling appears. The name of the endodermal swelling is hypobranchial eminence. Another name is the cupola of His. So, in relation to which arches it develops at the ventral ends of the second, third, and fourth arches. So, this is also unpaired swelling, same like tuberculum impar. It is at the ventral ends of the second, third, and fourth arches. A transverse sulcus divides this hypobranchial eminence into dorsal and ventral parts. So a single swelling hypobranchial eminence is divided into two parts, dorsal and ventral parts. Dorsal part forms the epiglottis and ventral part forms the posterior one-third of the tongue. The line of fusion between the two parts of the tongue is represented by the sulcus terminalis in the adult tongue. So this orange color represents the development of the anterior two-thirds of the tongue formed by the lingual swellings and the tuberculum impar. So this is the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. Another swelling appears at the ventral ends of the second, third, and fourth arches. That swelling will be called as hypobranchial eminence. It will be divided into two parts, ventral part and the dorsal part. Ventral part will forms the posterior one-third of the tongue. Dorsal part forms the epiglottis. So these are the two derivatives of the hypobranchial eminence, posterior one-third of the tongue and the epiglottis. Again we have to see the same image to understand the development of the tongue and the nerve supply of the tongue. If you see the nerve supply of the tongue, anterior two-thirds of the tongue will be the general sensation nerve will be the lingual nerve and the taste sensation will be the cauda tympani nerve. If you see the posterior one-third of the tongue, both the general sense and the special sense will be the glossopharyngeal nerve. If you see the posterior most part of the tongue, then it will be supplied by the internal laryngeal branch of the vagus. So first arch nerve is the lingual nerve, it supplies the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. So the anterior two-thirds of the tongue mainly develops from the first arch. If you see the posterior one-third of the tongue, glossopharyngeal nerve, which is the nerve of the third arch, and the internal laryngeal nerve, which is the nerve of the fourth arch. But when we start with this development of the hypobranchial eminence, we have told it develops in relation to the ventral ends of the second, third, and fourth pharyngeal arches. Then what is the nerve of the second pharyngeal arch? Facial nerve. It is not represented in this posterior one-third how it develops. So this cause for this composite development of the tongue mucosa is understood by this. The third arch overgrows, and that's why we have not seen this second arch nerve in the nerve supply of the tongue. Third arch overgrows, grows forwards over the second arch and fuses in a V-shaped manner with the ventral two-thirds of the tongue. that explains the development of the tongue in relation to the nerve supply of the tongue. So the development of the tongue we have completed till now, the mucous membrane of the tongue under the two headings, ventral two-third and posterior one-third. Ventral two-third by three swellings, a pair of the lingual swellings and an unpaired tuberculum impar. Posterior one-third develops by the swelling hypobranchial eminence, which gives rise to the posterior one-third of the tongue and also the epiglottis. Now we will continue with the development of the tongue muscles. Tongue muscles are developing from the 3 to 4 occipital myotomes. Myotomes mean, can anyone recollect and tell? It's a part of the somite. So these tongue muscles now develop from the occipital somites, myotomes. How they invade the tongue? They migrate ventrally along the epipericardial ridge and invade the tongue rudiments in the floor of the definitive mouth. When they migrate, they drag the hypoglossal nerve. That is the nerve of these myotomes, thus explaining this hypoglossal nerve is superficial to both the internal and external carotid arteries in the triangles of the neck. So these tongue muscles are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, which has been dragged along with the occipital myotomes to reach the tongue. The fibroareolar stroma of the tongue develops from the mesenchyme of the pharyngeal arches. So this completes the development of the tongue under three headings: development of the mucous membrane, development of the tongue muscles, development of the fibroareolar stroma. Now we will see few congenital abnormalities of the development of the tongue: macroglossia, microglossia. I think macro and micro terms themselves explain the abnormalities of the tongue. Aglossia, this is caused by the complete agenesis of the tongue rudiments. Sometimes maybe the hemiglossia, that may be caused by the suppression of one of the lingual swellings. Bifid tongue may be present. The anterior part of the tongue may split into two parts, caused by the failure of fusion of the two lingual swellings. Ankyloglossia or the tongue tie. When the alveolo-lingual sulcus separates the tongue imperfectly from the floor of the mouth, then that is called as the ankyloglossia or the tongue tie. In this, the movements of the tongue will be restricted and the lingual speech will be disturbed. How we can identify the ankyloglossia? There will be the shortening of the frenulum linguae in the dorsal part of the tongue, and it will be released by the surgical approaches. So these are the abnormalities of the development of the tongue. Now we will move on to the next topic in this class: development of the thyroid gland. This thyroid gland also develops in the floor of the primitive pharynx. We have been told in the beginning. So this thyroid gland develops before the fusion of the tongue rudiments So what are the tongue rudiments we have seen? Lingual swellings, tuberculum impar, hypobranchial eminence. So before this fusion of these rudiments, the endodermal cells dorsal to the tuberculum impar initially proliferate to form a surface elevation called as the median rudiment. So this median rudiment develops in relation just dorsal to the tuberculum impar. There is one elevation. Thereafter, the cells evaginate caudally through the substance of the tongue. So elevation now is burrowing inside the substance of the tongue so that it will be called as the thyroglossal duct. So first as median rudiment, then into the substance of the tongue as the thyroglossal duct. This image shows the course of the thyroglossal duct. This thyroglossal duct passes through the substance of the tongue, then in front of the hyoid bone and in front of the thyroid cartilage, then reaches in front of the trachea. So it is growing caudalwards in the median plane, mainly ventral to the hyoid bone. Sometimes it recurs dorsal to that also. When the duct reaches ventral to the proximal part of the trachea, it divides into a bilobed mass. So the thyroid gland structure you should be knowing, I think, will be consisting of the median part called as the isthmus and the lobes on either side. So that will be given by this thyroglossal duct. How this thyroglossal duct is dividing into the bilobed mass, which forms the primordium of the isthmus and the lateral lobes of the thyroid gland. Subsequently, the duct will disappear except the cephalic attachment as the foramen cecum of the tongue. This foramen cecum of the tongue will be appearing in relation to the sulcus terminalis. Just now we have seen the ventral 2/3 and the dorsal 1/3 of the tongue. When they fuse, it will be called as the sulcus terminalis. In relation to the sulcus terminalis, this foramen appears, foramen cecum. Further development of the thyroid gland within the bilobed mass, the duct subdivides into a series of double cellular plates. When the colloids accumulate within this bilaminar plates, then the development of the primary thyroid follicles. Subsequent buddings from the primary follicles and differentiation will cause the numerous secondary and definitive follicles. The secretion of the thyroid commences from the 4th month of the fetal life. The lateral thyroid elements derived from the caudal pharyngeal complex of the fourth pouch. Fourth pouch fuses with the rudimentary fifth pouch to give the caudal pharyngeal complex that we have seen in the previous class of pharyngeal arches. This caudal pharyngeal complex will give rise to the thymic element, lateral thyroid element, and the ultimobranchial body. That also we have seen. So this lateral thyroid elements, what is this part of the lateral thyroid elements in relation to the development of the thyroid gland? They fuse with the bilobed mass on either sides. bilobed mass of the thyroglossal duct so that they arrest further caudal migration of the mass. Parafollicular cells of the thyroid gland are derived from the ultimobranchial body of the caudal pharyngeal complex. Or the parafollicular cells. What is the other name of the parafollicular cells? C cells of the thyroid gland developed from the ultimobranchial body of the caudopharyngeal complex. This completes the development of the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland mainly develops from the thyroglossal duct just dorsal to the tuberculum impar of the tongue. Another Another contribution of development of the tongue is the lateral thyroid elements derived from the caudal pharyngeal complex. Third is the parafollicular cells from the caudal pharyngeal complex, ultimobranchial body of the caudal pharyngeal complex. So you have to write these 3 points: thyroglossal duct, lateral thyroid elements of the caudal pharyngeal complex, ultimobranchial body of the caudal pharyngeal complex. Now we will see few of the congenital abnormalities of the thyroid gland. There may be the abnormalities of the shape of the thyroid gland. One of the lobes may be rudimentary. Sometimes there may be the pyramidal lobe in the isthmus. Abnormalities of the position. The thyroglossal duct passes through the tongue in front of the hyoid bone, in front of the laryngeal cartilages. Then it reaches in front of the trachea. Just imagine it may be start before trachea, in front of hyoid bone, in front of the laryngeal cartilages, or in the tongue itself. So there may be the abnormalities of the position of the tongue. So this image shows the pyramidal lobe of the thyroid gland. So this is the isthmus. In relation to the isthmus, this lobe will be present. So this may be the persistence of the thyroglossal duct and which divides into the thyroid parts. So abnormalities of the position may be the lingual thyroid. So what is the cause of the lingual thyroid? There is the arrested caudal growth of the thyroglossal duct lead to the development of the thyroid gland within the tongue itself. That is intralingual. There may be the thyroid gland development in front of the hyoid bone or above the hyoid bone or below the hyoid bone, that is suprahyoid, infrahyoid. Sometimes it may reach the thorax also, intrathoracic thyroid. Sometimes in apart from the normal thyroid gland, there may be the ectopic thyroid tissue, tongue, in relation to the tongue, larynx, and the trachea. Remnants of the thyroglossal duct will persist as the persistent duct so that they will cause thyroglossal cyst and thyroglossal fistula. Thyroglossal duct disappears except the cephalic opening that will persist as the foramen cecum of the tongue. That is the normal development. If it is persisting in the middle also, that will cause the thyroglossal cyst or the thyroglossal fistula. Cyst means it is closed, fistula means communication to the exterior or to the interior. So this shows the course of the thyroglossal duct. Sometimes it is arrested in any of the place that causes the lingual thyroid or in relation to the hyoid bone, suprahyoid thyroid or infrahyoid thyroid, like that. Sometimes only the middle part persists, so that it will cause, it is not developing into the thyroid gland, it is developing into the cystic formation that will be called as thyroglossal cyst. So this boy is having this thyroglossal cyst. So the diagnostic features of the thyroglossal cyst is mainly this swelling will be in the midline of the neck, and this swelling will move up and down with deglutition, same as thyroid gland. Thyroid gland will move up and down with deglutition. So this swelling also will move up and down with deglutition. That confirms this diagnosis of the thyroglossal cyst. Summary of the development of the tongue and thyroid gland. The floor of the primitive pharynx shows development of three derivatives, craniocaudally, tongue development, and here this thyroglossal duct development, and also the laryngeal groove. The tongue develops from four swellings, a pair of lingual swellings and an unpaired tuberculum impar. These three will fuse to form the anterior two-third of the tongue. Another swelling, hypobranchial eminence, that will divide into two parts, ventral part and dorsal part. Ventral part will give rise to the posterior one-third of the tongue. Dorsal part will give rise to the epiglottis. Development of the thyroid gland. Thyroglossal duct appears just dorsal to the tuberculum impar. It grows caudally into the tongue and in front of the hyoid bone, reaches in front of the trachea, divides into the bilobed mass, and give rise to the isthmus and the lobes of the thyroid gland. Lateral thyroid elements derived from the caudal pharyngeal complex also fuse with the bilobed mass of the thyroglossal duct, gives rise to the lateral parts of the thyroid gland. And the third part which gives rise to the thyroid gland is the ultimobranchial body, which gives rise to the C cells of the thyroid gland.